Intro. In 2016, a quiet college town in Pennsylvania became the stage for one of the most unsettling disappearances in modern history. Not a child taken from a playground, not a hiker lost in the woods, but something far more ordinary and far more terrifying. Two young women, Emma Clark and Rachel Myers, shared an off-campus apartment just a few blocks away from the university library. They were inseparable. They studied late into the night, whispered secrets under blankets, laughed over bad cafeteria food, and sometimes stayed awake until dawn talking about their futures. To the outside world, they were just another pair of roommates. Normal, ordinary, safe. But one morning, only one of them woke up. Rachel rose to the sound of her alarm. She groggily padded across the carpet, expecting to smell coffee brewing, to hear Emma humming in the shower, to see the familiar mess of notebooks on the counter. But the apartment was silent. Emma's bed was empty, her blankets tossed aside as if she had simply stepped out for a moment. Her phone sat neatly charging on the nightstand. Her shoes were by the door, her keys untouched. No broken locks, no forced entry, no signs of struggle. It was as if she had simply dissolved into the night air. At first, the police thought she'd left voluntarily. Maybe she needed space. Maybe she went to a friend's house. Maybe she was stressed. But Emma's class notes were still spread out on the desk. Her wallet sat untouched in the kitchen, and Rachel swore that just hours earlier, she had heard Emma breathing in the bed beside her. This isn't folklore. It isn't a cautionary tale whispered in dorm halls to frighten freshmen. It's real. It's documented in police files, in transcripts, in testimony that even now leaves investigators at a loss for words. And tonight, you will hear every detail. The interviews, the contradictions, the evidence that doesn't add up, and the sound, yes, the sound, that investigators captured, buried deep in the case files, the one they never wanted the public to hear. Because once you do, you'll never trust the silence of your own home again. You are listening to Screams of the Mind, the darkest corner where fears are given a voice. Subscribe now, because what you're about to hear isn't just a story. It's a warning. Chapter 1. The roommates meet Hannah Emma Clark and Rachel Meyer, both 21st, both students at the same university, best friends since freshman year, though in many ways, they were opposites. Hannah was the kind of girl everyone noticed when she walked into a room, outgoing, charming, loud laughter that carried down the hallways. She was the life of the party, the one who always convinced Rachel to leave her textbooks behind for just one drink. Rachel was different, thoughtful, soft-spoken, a planner. She was the one professors remembered for her careful notes, the one who color-coded her calendars, the one who made sure the bills were paid on time. If Hannah was fire, Rachel was the anchor that kept her grounded. Their apartment was nothing special. 2 small bedrooms, a narrow kitchen that always smelled faintly of microwave popcorn and cheap coffee, and a living room cluttered with half-empty mugs, textbooks, and laundry baskets that never quite got emptied. To the neighbors, they were normal. The kind of college girls you'd expect to see walking back from class with headphones in or carrying takeout bags late at night. No fights, no drama, no signs of what was coming. Until the first night, Rachel thought she heard something. It was faint, subtle, a sound most people would have brushed off. But Rachel wasn't most people. It came from the wall behind her bed. A scratching, light, sporadic, as if nails were dragging against old plaster. At first, she thought she was imagining it. She lay still in bed, holding her breath, trying to decide if it was real. The sound stopped, then started again. The next morning, she mentioned it casually over breakfast. Hannah laughed. Old building, probably rats. Don't worry about it. Rachel forced a smile. She wanted to believe that. She really did. But that night, the scratching came back. This time, louder, longer, almost deliberate. She pressed her ear to the wall. The sound stopped instantly, as if whatever was making it knew she was listening. Rachel barely slept that night. By the third night, she was convinced it wasn't rats. Rats scurried. Rats scratched quickly, erratically. But this was slow, measured, like fingertips dragging across wood, like someone waiting. She tried to tell Hannah again, but Hannah waved it off. "You're overthinking. You always do. Stop stressing, Rach. It's nothing." Rachel tried to let it go, tried to laugh about it the way Hannah did. But deep down, something gnawed at her. Because the sound wasn't random. It seemed to come at the same time each night. Around 2:13 a.m., a sound that made her blood run cold. Breathing. Not yet. Because how do you tell your best friend that something inside your walls is listening? Chapter 2. The little things. Over the next few weeks, Rachel began to notice things. Little things. Things so small, so trivial, that anyone else would have brushed them off. But Rachel wasn't like anyone else. She noticed. She always noticed. Her toothbrush. It wasn't where she had left it. Not angled the same way. Not resting against the side of the cup the way she placed it every single night. At first, she thought she was imagining it. A trick of memory. But then, it happened again. And again. A glass in the sink, spotted with water, faint streaks of fingerprints she knew weren't hers. She hadn't used it, and Hannah swore she hadn't either. And sometimes, this was the worst of all, Rachel would step into their apartment and smell food. Warm, fresh, cooked food, fried onions, garlic, the unmistakable scent of bacon. But the pans were untouched, the stove cold, and Hannah, when asked, would just shake her head. Rachel's thoughts spiraled. Was she sleepwalking? Forgetting things? Or was someone else there? She decided to keep track. Nothing dramatic. Just little notes scribbled into the margins of a notebook she usually reserved for lecture outlines. September 18th, 10:45 p.m. Toothbrush moved again. September 23rd, 7:12 a.m. Smell of bacon, no pans used. September 29th, 2:16 a.m. Scratching louder, Hannah asleep. Page after page filled with small entries. Evidence, Rachel told herself. If it got worse, if she needed to prove it wasn't in her head, she'd have something to point to. At first, Hannah brushed it off. "You're stressed, Rach. Midterms, no sleep, too much caffeine. You're driving yourself crazy." And Rachel wanted to believe her, wanted to believe it was all in her imagination. But then came the night Hannah heard it too. It was late, past midnight. The apartment was silent except for the hum of their cheap refrigerator. Rachel lay awake, staring at her ceiling, every nerve on edge. The scratching had started earlier, softer than usual, but she could still hear it behind her headboard. This time, Hannah wasn't asleep. "Rach," she whispered into the dark. "Do you hear that?" Rachel held her breath. Yes, she heard it. But it wasn't scratching anymore. It was breathing. Both of them froze. Neither moved. The sound went on, patient, deliberate, steady. It wasn't pipes. It wasn't rats. It was the rhythm of lungs filling and emptying. Rachel whispered, her voice shaking, "It's right behind me." And Hannah, for the first time, didn't laugh, didn't dismiss it, didn't tell her she was imagining things, because Hannah could hear it too, the sound of something alive, breathing inside their walls. Chapter 3. The first call. The next morning, Rachel had had enough. She told Hannah, "We're calling maintenance. I don't care if they think I'm crazy. Something is in these walls." So they did. A man in a faded work uniform showed up around noon, toolbox in hand. He smelled faintly of cigarettes and motor oil, the kind of man who had worked in 100 buildings just like theirs and seen it all. Rachel led him to the bedroom, pointed to the wall, explained everything. The scratching, the noises, the breathing. The man listened, nodding occasionally, his eyes drifting toward the window, already bored. He pressed his ear against the drywall, knocked a few times, checked the vents, the baseboards, the closet. Finally, he straightened and said the words Rachel dreaded. Old place. These walls settle, creak, shift with the weather. Maybe a mouse now and then. But there's no sign of animals, nothing alive in there. He shrugged, closed his toolbox, and left without a second glance. To him, it was over. To Rachel, it had only just begun. For a few days, things went quiet. No scratching, no breathing. Just silence. Rachel tried to convince herself that maybe she had imagined it all. Maybe Hannah was right. It was the stress. Maybe the worker really was right, and the walls were just old, moody wood shifting in the night. But then came the recording. It was a Tuesday morning. Hannah woke up groggy, rubbing her eyes. She reached for her phone on the nightstand, intending to check the time before class. But as she unlocked the screen, she noticed something strange. A file. In her voice, memos. She hadn't made it. Confused, she pressed play. At first, it was silence. A faint hiss of background noise, the kind of static you'd expect if the phone had been recording a quiet room. Then, breathing. Slow, heavy, deliberate. The kind of sound that fills a room, the kind that doesn't belong to you. Hannah froze, staring at her screen as the sound continued. A minute passed. Then two. Just breathing. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. And then, it changed. Right at the end of the file. A voice, low, raspy, close enough to feel against your skin. It whispered two words. I see you. Hannah dropped the phone. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Her mouth went dry. She scrambled out of bed, clutching the phone in her shaking hand, and burst into Rachel's room. Rachel sat up instantly at the look on Hannah's face. What? What happened? Hannah didn't answer. She just hit play. Together they listened, breathing, endless, suffocating breathing. And then that voice. I see you. Rachel covered her mouth, stifling a scream. That's in here. That's in the apartment. The two sat frozen, unable to move, unable to speak, the reality sinking in. This wasn't rats. This wasn't pipes. This wasn't their imagination. Someone, or something, had been in their rooms, close enough to their beds to record their sleep, close enough to watch and whisper. Chapter 4, The Night of the Disappearance, October 3rd, 2016. It was a Monday night, chilly, the kind of air that clings damp to your clothes. The campus library stayed open late that time of year, filled with students cramming for midterms. Rachel was one of them. She had texted Hannah earlier that evening. Rachel, staying late, don't wait up. Hannah, okay, be safe. The final message came at 11:28 p.m. On my way back. It was the last time anyone heard from her. The last walk. The walk from the library to their apartment wasn't long, just 10 minutes. A straight path lit by scattered street lamps. Security footage from outside the library shows her leaving, a backpack slung over one shoulder, her phone in hand. She looked tired, but calm, normal. A few minutes later, a neighbor across the street noticed her key in the front door. She pushed inside. Lights flicked on. Another neighbor upstairs remembered hearing footsteps. Light, hurried, climbing toward the girl's apartment. And then, the sounds. At around 12:04 a.m., someone in the unit below reported hearing thuds. Not loud, not violent, just odd. A dull knock, a shuffle. Then what sounded like a door closing. After that, silence. The morning after. When Hannah woke up, the apartment felt colder than usual. She thought maybe Rachel had gotten up early for class, but when she walked past Rachel's room, something felt wrong. The bed looked like someone had been in it, the covers pulled back, the pillow dented. but Rachel wasn't there. Her phone sat charging by the nightstand. Her wallet and keys were neatly stacked on the dresser. Her backpack leaned against the desk, untouched. It was as if she had gone to bed and evaporated. Hannah's panic. At first, Hannah tried to reason it out. Maybe Rachel had gone for a run. Maybe she had left to grab coffee and just forgotten her wallet. But the minutes stretched into hours, and with each one, the silence in that apartment grew unbearable. She called Rachel's phone. It rang on the nightstand beside the bed. She checked the closet. Clothes still hung neatly, shoes still lined in pairs. Every sign pointed to one impossible conclusion. Rachel hadn't left. Something, or someone, had taken her. The police. By late morning, Hannah called the police. 2 officers arrived. They walked through the apartment taking notes. No signs of forced entry, no broken locks, nothing out of place. One officer asked if Rachel had been under stress, if she might have left willingly. Hannah snapped back. Her phone is here. Her wallet is here. Her keys are here. She didn't leave. The officers exchanged a look. They didn't say it out loud, but their eyes betrayed the thought. College kids disappear all the time? Still, they filed a missing persons report. Rachel Meyer, age 21, last seen October 3rd, 2016, and the case began. The neighbors' later interviews with neighbors turned up fragments of a puzzle that never fit together. One neighbor swore they heard soft crying in the early hours of the morning. Another claimed they saw a figure in the upstairs window, but insisted it wasn't Rachel. And one elderly tenant, who lived directly beneath the girls, told police she woke to the sound of breathing through her ceiling vent. When asked if she could be mistaken, she shook her head. "I've lived in this building 20 years. I know the sounds it makes. That wasn't the pipes. That wasn't air. That was someone. Someone alive. Someone listening." Hannah alone. By the second night, Hannah couldn't bear it. The silence in the apartment was crushing. She moved from room to room, half expecting Rachel to appear, to laugh, to roll her eyes, to explain everything. But all she found was absence, the faint indent in Rachel's pillow. Her notebook left open on the desk, a half-finished assignment waiting, a mug of tea, cold and forgotten. And in the stillness, Hannah swore she could hear it again, that sound that had haunted them weeks before. Breathing, not her own, not Rachel's, something deeper, heavier, coming from somewhere she couldn't place. The night Rachel disappeared wasn't just an accident. It was the night the walls swallowed her whole. Chapter 5. Police Investigation. When police officially opened the case, they treated the apartment like a crime scene. The ordinary little 2-bedroom, the mismatched mugs, the microwave popcorn smell, the half-drunk coffee cups, was suddenly a place of silence and latex gloves. Detectives photographed everything. They dusted for fingerprints. They tested the locks, the windows, the doors. And they found nothing. No forced entry, no tampered locks, no broken glass. On the surface, the apartment was normal. Too normal. But then, they looked up. The attic crawl space. The building had been constructed in the 1940s, with a low crawl space attic that connected several units. Rarely used, never cleaned, it was a forgotten cavity above the tenants' heads. A patrol officer noticed a faint draft from the ceiling vent. When they pushed the hatch open and aimed a flashlight inside, what they saw didn't belong in any normal apartment. A thin, stained mattress, food wrappers scattered in piles, empty water bottles lined neatly in rows, and taped to the slanted wall. Photographs, not stock photos, not random snapshots. Photographs of Rachel Meyer, sleeping, studying at her desk, curled on the couch with a blanket, even brushing her teeth in the bathroom. Each photo was taken from inside the apartment. Someone had been there, watching, living above them. The evidence bags. The items were bagged and tagged. Detectives counted 17 photographs in total. Most were blurry, as though taken quickly in low light, but some were sharp, too sharp, close enough to see the faint freckles on Rachel's cheek, close enough to capture the half-smile she wore when she thought no one was looking. Where were these photos taken from? That was the chilling part. Angles showed they had been shot through vents, through the crack of an open door, one even from directly behind the couch where Rachel sat reading. Whoever had taken them wasn't just in the attic. They were in the apartment. The stench of truth. Hannah watched from the corner as the officers pulled bag after bag from the attic. She couldn't process it. For weeks, she'd brushed off Rachel's fears. The toothbrush moved, the smell of food, the breathing in the walls. Now it was undeniable. Rachel had been right. Someone had been there the whole time, living above them, crawling into their rooms, watching. Every time they laughed, whispered secrets, or drifted to sleep, someone else was awake, listening, waiting. The questions detectives began piecing together a timeline. How long had the intruder been there? How had they entered? Why Rachel? No fingerprints were lifted from the photographs. No DNA was recovered from the mattress. Whoever had lived in that crawl space had been careful. Too careful. The food wrappers suggested weeks, maybe months. Brands Hannah and Rachel never bought. Fast food bags from late-night restaurants across town. Empty cans of energy drinks neither of the girls ever touched. One officer said quietly, almost to himself, "He's been here longer than we think." The neighbors' accounts detectives canvassed the building again, armed now with the photographs. One neighbor remembered seeing shadows in the hall late at night, but assumed it was students sneaking in drunk. Another swore they heard faint laughter through the vent, but thought it was the girls upstairs. An older resident recalled food going missing from her own fridge weeks earlier. She chalked it up to forgetfulness. Now every unexplained sound, every missing item, every creak in the night, painted a picture too horrifying to dismiss. This wasn't random. It was ritual. Someone had been hiding in the walls of this building, sliding between apartments, stealing food, watching tenants live their lives, and no one noticed until it was too late. Hannah's terror. For Hannah, the discovery shattered her world. Every memory of the past month replayed with a new, sinister filter. The scratching Rachel complained about, the misplaced items, the smell of food. They weren't harmless oddities. They weren't in her head. They were signs, warnings, and no one believed them until Rachel was gone. Hannah couldn't sleep that night. The photographs played over and over in her mind. Her best friend's face, frozen in time, captured by someone who shouldn't have been there. And the worst part? Rachel's disappearance meant one thing. The man in the attic had finally come down. Chapter 6. The Sighting. The night Rachel vanished, the building was alive with sounds no one paid attention to. Until later, until the silence set in. It was then that neighbors began to remember things, details, glimpses, things they wished they hadn't ignored. The first witness. On the morning of October 4th, while police canvassed the area, a woman from the second floor hesitated at her doorway. She clutched her robe tighter and told the officer, almost in a whisper, "I thought I saw someone last night. A man, tall, skinny, moving strange. I only caught him from the corner of my eye, slipping out the back door. I thought maybe it was just a student sneaking in or out. But now, I'm not so sure." Her description was haunting. Tall, gaunt, shoulders hunched, as though trying to fold himself smaller. Moving too quickly, too silently. But when asked for details, clothes, face, hair, she shook her head. It was too dark, too fast. The officer jotted it down, but in his notes, he later admitted, description vague. Could be anyone. The footsteps in the ceiling. Another neighbor, a man in his 30s, came forward hesitantly. He said he had heard footsteps above his apartment for weeks. At first, he thought it was the tenants upstairs. Students, he figured. Young people staying up late, moving around, playing music. But then he remembered something else. The footsteps weren't the sound of someone walking room to room. They were slower, more deliberate. One step, pause. Another step, pause. As though someone were crawling, not in the apartment above his, but in the ceiling, in the space between. He admitted he dismissed it. He didn't want to be the weird neighbor calling management about noises in an old building. Now, hearing about Rachel's disappearance, he couldn't sleep. The footsteps replayed in his head over and over, in sync with the silence of his apartment. The woman with the window. Then came another account. A young woman living in the building directly across from Hannah and Rachel's unit said she often left her blinds cracked open. From her window, she could see into theirs, and sometimes, late at night, she swore she saw movement inside. Not Hannah, not Rachel, someone else. A tall figure pacing, sometimes standing perfectly still by the window, watching, sometimes vanishing the moment she blinked. She convinced herself it was nothing, a trick of the light, a shadow. But now, she wasn't so sure. Police reports. Each story added weight, but no clarity. The police logged them, but without a name, a face, or solid evidence. The man in the attic was nothing more than a phantom stitched together from fear and rumor. The photographs in the attic proved he was real. But the sightings blurred into uncertainty. A tall figure, footsteps in the ceiling, shadows in the window, 3 different witnesses, 3 different accounts. It could have been paranoia, or it could have been him. The trail grows, cold. For weeks, detectives followed every possible lead. They checked local shelters for transient men matching the vague description. They interviewed campus staff, night shift workers, even janitors. They pulled surveillance footage from nearby gas stations and convenience stores. Nothing. No suspects. No arrests. It was as if the man had slipped out of the building, out of the town, and into the dark, leaving only silence in his wake. The haunting silence. But silence has a way of echoing. For Hannah, it was unbearable. Every night alone in that apartment, she swore she could still hear the faint scuffle of feet above her. She swore she caught glimpses of shadows shifting just outside her door. She wasn't alone. Other tenants in the building began breaking their leases. They moved out, unable to bear the thought of living where someone had once hidden and where someone had vanished. But the man, never caught, never identified, and Rachel Meyer, she was never found. Chapter 7. Theories. After the police wrapped up their initial investigation, the case grew cold. No suspects, no answers, just silence. But silence breeds theories, and in the absence of truth, fear began to write its own story. The stalker theory. The first, and perhaps most obvious explanation, was that Rachel had a stalker, someone who followed her, someone who slipped into their apartment unnoticed, someone who made the attic his home. The photographs, after all, told a disturbing truth. He had been close, closer than anyone imagined. Some believed he was a stranger, maybe a drifter, slipping in from the streets. Others thought he was someone Rachel knew, a classmate perhaps, or someone from campus who fixated on her. And the most disturbing part? Whoever he was, he had lived undetected, eating their food, watching their lives, waiting. If that was true, it meant Rachel wasn't taken by force. She was taken by someone who had already been inside her world, inside her home. The something else theory. But not everyone believed it was human. Neighbors whispered other possibilities, darker ones, the scratches in the wall, the footsteps crawling, not walking, the feeling of being watched, even when no one was there. Some swore it wasn't a man at all, that something lived in the walls, something old, something patient, something that didn't just watch, but waited. Stories began circulating, tales of houses where things had been found in crawl spaces, shapes moving in shadows, people vanishing without a trace, only for signs of something to be discovered later. Was Rachel taken by a stalker? Or by something that belonged to the house itself? Something that lingered long before they moved in and remained long after? The campus whispers. By then, the story had taken on a life of its own. Students whispered it in dorm rooms and at late-night study sessions. They called him the man in the attic. Some swore if you stayed up late enough, with the lights off, you could hear the faint scrape of his nails against the walls. Others joked, nervously, that he still roamed campus, slipping into unlocked dorms, hiding in closets, waiting. Every creak of an old building, every unexplained sound in the night. It became him. And the scariest part? No one could prove them wrong. The voicemail. But then came the detail that cemented the terror. 2 weeks after Rachel disappeared, Hannah's phone buzzed. A new voicemail. No number attached. No missed call to trace. Just a message. She pressed play. For nearly 20 seconds, nothing but breathing. And then at the very end, the whisper. I miss her. Sound. Whisper repeats, layered and echoing, each time fainter. I miss her. I miss her. I miss her. The voice was low, raspy, almost broken. Some believed it was a confession, the stalker taunting her. Others believed it was proof of something worse, that whatever had taken Rachel wasn't finished. The lingering fear. The voicemail was turned over to the police. They tried to trace it. No luck. It came from nowhere and led nowhere. For Hannah, it was unbearable. She replayed it over and over, trying to find meaning in the breath, in the cadence of the whisper. But all she found was dread. Because if he missed Rachel, did that mean he still watched Hannah? Chapter 8. The unsolved ending. To this day, the case remains unsolved. Rachel Meyer's name is still written in official reports as a missing person. Her photograph, the same one taken during her sophomore year, smiling in a bright campus courtyard, still floats on cold case databases. Her belongings were never touched. Her wallet, her keys, her phone, still plugged into the charger. It was as if she had simply vanished. No body, no suspect, no closure, just silence. The apartment lives on, but the apartment is still there. Students cycle in and out, young faces moving into the same off-campus unit, lured by its low rent and close proximity to campus. Most of them have never heard of Rachel Meyer. Most of them don't know what happened in that space, but some do. And those who know whisper to the others. Whispers about late nights when the scratching starts again. Whispers about food missing from the fridge. Whispers about the sound of something shifting in the attic. Even when it's supposed to be empty. Some tenants laugh it off. They blame mice. They blame old pipes. They blame stress. But others aren't so sure. The pattern. Every year, new students report the same things. The toothbrush moved. The faint smell of food cooking when no one is home. The quiet, steady sound of breathing when the apartment should be silent. One tenant swore she woke up to find her blanket pulled halfway off the bed, as though someone had been standing there tugging it in the night. Another claimed she found footprints in the dust beneath the attic hatch. Bare footprints. And yet, no matter how many reports, how many stories, nothing is ever proven. Police dismiss it as paranoia. The university avoids talking about it, and the building keeps taking in new residents. The lingering fear. But here's the truth. No one wants to admit. Rachel Meyer isn't the only one. Across the country, there are stories just like hers. Stories of people vanishing from locked homes. Stories of crawl spaces discovered with evidence of someone living inside. Stories of photographs taped to walls, of breathing recorded on phones in the dead of night. It happens more than you think, and the scariest part? You don't know it's happening until it's too late. The final warning. So tonight, I leave you with this. How well do you really know your home? When you turn off the lights, when you lay your head on the pillow, when you close your eyes and surrender to sleep. Do you ever wonder who else might be awake? Listening, watching, waiting. Check your walls. Check your attic. Check the spaces between the places you never look. Because sometimes, the danger isn't outside. It isn't a stranger breaking in. Sometimes, it's already inside. I miss her. Outro. You've just spent some minutes walking through a nightmare. Now tell me, what do you believe? Do you think Rachel Meyer was taken by a stalker? Someone who slipped into her life quietly, hiding in the shadows of her own apartment, waiting for the perfect moment? Or do you believe it was something else entirely? Something that lived in the walls, something that watched, something that never left? Drop your theories in the comments below. I read every single one, and your thoughts. They keep this darkness alive. Tell me what you think. If you're new here, welcome. You've just stepped into Screams of the Mind, the darkest corner where fears are given a voice. Here, we explore bone-chilling horror stories, psychological nightmares that twist reality, creepy true tales whispered through the years, and narratives so haunting they crawl under your skin and stay there. This is not just entertainment. This is a warning. So before you go, do something for me. Hit subscribe right now. Turn on the bell so you don't miss tomorrow's story. Because tomorrow, we go deeper, into darker halls, into stories that will keep you awake long after the video ends. And once you've joined this community of listeners, once you've opened the door, there is no going back. But before you leave, I want you to look around. Check your locks, check your doors, check the quiet corners of your home, the ones you avoid looking at for too long. Because security is an illusion, safety is fragile, and sometimes what waits in the silence is already inside. Still watching. So sleep well tonight, if you can.